Vaccines for kids do not lead to autism.
And researchers say it's practically indisputable.
Of all of Trump's dangerous cabinet picks from this psycho,
the government gangsters and the fake news media are coming for our constitutional republic,
to the head of our Department of Education,
President-elect Donald Trump has picked WWE co-founder Linda McMahon to be the education secretary.
The craziest is also the most dangerous.
Bizarre article on RFK, and they're reporting that doctors, in a deposition, that RFK said doctors found a worm in his brain that had eaten part of his brain and then died there.
RFK Jr. is dangerous because of two things. One, he's a conspiratorial idiot whose declarations about science and public policy are about as heavily researched as a third grader's term paper. And two, people give him credence because of his name. And we'll get back to that.
Again, you take a look at autism today versus 20, 25 years ago, it's like not even believable. So we're going to have reports. No, nothing's going to happen very quickly. I think you're going to find that Bobby
President Trump has promised me is control of the public health agencies, which are HHS and its sub-agencies, CDC, FDA, NIH, and a few others.
But health experts have criticized Kennedy's repeated debunked claims attempting to draw links between vaccines and autism.
Trump's nomination of a vaccine denier is worrisome, to say the least, as is the possibility that the Senate may actually vote him in.
I rise today to call on our colleagues in the Senate to reject Donald Trump's nomination of RFK Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Now, RFK has proven himself for decades to be a conspiracy theorist, and we cannot allow the critical work by the HHS and the doctors, the medical professionals there, to be undermined by someone with his record. Now, for those not familiar, RFK Jr. first has no scientific or medical credentials. Instead, he spent his career fueling anti-vaccine movements around the world, including one in Samoa that contributed to a measles outbreak that killed dozens of people and made almost 6,000 sick, most of them children and infants. Now, RFK Jr. has falsely claimed that vaccines cause autism and suggested that COVID health measures were worse than the Holocaust. He's also peddled in conspiracy theories that chemicals in water are making children transgender and gay. Now, this is someone who has threatened to gut the National Institutes of Health, the federal agency responsible for medical and public health research. Now, they, along with the rest of HHS, do vital, nonpartisan work that impacts every American in every community. From pandemic preparedness to cancer research to resources for mental health and substance abuse. There are real lives at stake. We just went through a pandemic that cost the lives of 1.3 million Americans, the single largest loss of life event in the modern era in our country and around the world. And we cannot allow at this moment to hand over the keys of public health to an extreme and unqualified and dangerous nominee. The Senate must reject RFK Jr. for HHS.
Let's start with autism. NIH reports that while it may seem like autism is more prevalent now than in the past, it's not necessarily worse. The increased diagnosis is largely attributed to better awareness, earlier screenings, and improved diagnostic capabilities, meaning more people with autism are being identified and supported rather than the autism itself becoming more severe. But again, that's science, and the same people who think the drones are coming from Iranian motherships or, like Nancy Mace, think they're from another universe, she actually said that, they're the ones pushing scientists and academicians aside so Trump can seem smart, a truly Herculean task.
Even I say to myself, you're a frickin' genius.
So where did this myth about autism get started?
Definitely know is that there's no association between vaccines and autism. The idea that there ever was put forth by a physician who made up false data and published it, and no one could ever replicate the data. So he was investigated, he was found to be a fraud, and he lost his medical license. Unfortunately, this myth has persisted for years and years and years, and millions of dollars have been poured into showing that there is no association between vaccines and autism.
Now, as far as Trump cabinet nominees go, while Hegseth would be a disaster, Kennedy could actually kill people, including children and the elderly. I mean, just look at his past.
A decade ago, a Central Park mystery baffled New Yorkers.
We saw something on the back wheel that It could have been a raccoon.
And captured headlines across the country.
Police now want to know how the bear died and how it got into the park.
Now we know. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the independent presidential candidate, says he brought the dead bear to Central Park.
And as I mentioned earlier, the Kennedy name is an iconic cornerstone of America that no longer exists. And to see RFK Jr. terrorize it, well, it's not going down well with the Kennedy family.
She's also Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s sister. I just wanted to start. That was a very powerful statement, and I imagine it was pretty painful to have to do. But why do you feel so compelled to speak out at this moment?
I'm outraged and disgusted by my brother's gaudy and obscene embrace of Donald Trump. And I completely get out and separate and dissociate myself.
But the real worry is what we already addressed, vaccines. Now, the effectiveness of the mRNA vaccine is because they took almost 30 years to develop it, and it was incredible. For a better perspective, 1 million Americans died from COVID. That's about 1 in 350 people. Most weren't vaccinated. But the most severe pandemic in recent history was the 1918 influenza virus, often called the Spanish flu. The virus infected roughly 500 million people, 1/3 of the world's population, and caused 50 million deaths worldwide. But here in the U.S., with no vaccine and a population of 106 million, it killed 700,000 Americans. That's 1 out of 120. And to bring it all home, currently there's a worry that a human-to-human transmission of bird flu without a vaccine could kill up to 50% of the people infected. Hopefully, the mutation that needs to occur for the transmission to happen, well, the odds are pretty small. But so are the odds if you're a kid getting sick and dying from mumps, measles, and rubella, until the Kennedy crazy started to appear and attack childhood immunizations.
What would it even mean to deauthorize a vaccine or even just to pull back on vaccine mandates? How exactly would that work? And what would people be at risk of afterward?
He can put pressure on the FDA to revoke the authorization of the polio vaccine, the measles vaccine, any vaccine he wants.
This was a massive study of more than 650,000 children, and researchers say it's practically indisputable. But a growing number of parents don't believe it's safe.
You're an idiot! Look, RFK Jr. is a typical lazy intellectual. With his money and access, he should know the truth and stop spreading lies that could kill millions. But the attack on science, and Robert Fauci in particular, is emblematic of what civilizations throughout the ages have done to smart people who challenge myths and ignorance. And that hasn't changed at all. Yeah, RFK's not bright, and he's become a stain on his family name. But mostly, his Trump-like art of the stupid, what's going to keep me up at night.
Damn right.
I'm as mad as hell.
This is not a normal election.
Whether the women like it or not.
Suck my fat one. This isn't their Republican Party anymore.
And this guy's personal life is a total disaster.
Trust me.
Shut the fuck up, Darren.
Who's with me? Oh, yeah, the lie. Indictable.
Out of sheer morbid curiosity, I'm allowing this freak show to continue.
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes!
Tick-tock!
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.